Hey friends, hope you're having a great day. This video is going to have three main topics that I want to highlight. One, soil health and plant spacing. Two, companion planting. And three, pollination. This is going to be a brief discussion on these three specific methods and principles to hopefully help you lay a foundation, get those creative juices flowing, and to set you down the path of thinking about these concepts while you're actually out in the garden. This in no way is an extensive look into these three topics. I'm going to basically just scratch the surface. More than likely I'll do a series in the future, but for this video I just want to give you some simple tips and pointers that I picked up over the years pertaining to these three, with the intention of helping you establish a spot to grow really healthy and productive crops. I want to give you advice that's simple and effective to execute so you can get the most out of your efforts and help you produce the kinds of yields of the foods you like that you can be proud of, that will give you an abundance of healthy, nutritionally dense food that you can enjoy with your family and share with your neighbors. First, I want to just say that all of our gardens are grown using fertilizer from our chickens and our rabbits. I can't stress enough the importance of working with these two types of animals. I think a lot of people know about chickens and give them credit where credit is due on the homestead, but rabbits are even more crucial in my opinion. For sure, this homestead will never be without rabbits. I have a ton I could say on that, but for this video I'm going to skip it. Just know that it's definitely worth a discussion of its own, and I will be doing a video in the future on that. So on top of the fertilizer we get from those two, we do a lot of composting from the scraps that come out of our kitchen to pretty much any organic material coming out of the garden itself. We are all organic. We use no sprays, no chemicals. We rely solely on the techniques and the practices that I'm talking about to give us the yields that you're going to see in this video. Overall, these methods produce mass abundance, all in a system that's very synergistic and has very minimal outside sources of input being brought into the garden, which means that it's very low cost, very easy to maintain, and most everything is done right here on the homestead. So the first thing is soil health and plant spacing. Over the last 7 years, it's really been a lesson in planting vast numbers of plants over having a ton of space. And what I mean is when I first started growing, I didn't really utilize a lot of the growing space that we have, simply because most resources out there tell you you have to space plants so far apart and don't really focus or even mention at all the importance of soil health and natural nutrients in the soil such that are found in compost. So a lot of the soil we grow our plants on is really just deficient. Naturally, if your soil isn't packed full of nutrients, you're going to need more space for your plants because they're fighting amongst themselves for the little amount of nutrients that are actually there. So the key is building soil, and we do this by keeping the grow beds on our homestead around 4 feet wide and filled with organic matter. We do raised beds, but we also just mound the soil like is shown here. So don't be deterred if you can't afford the lumber to enclose your beds, especially with the way that prices have been lately for wood. Some other options could be to use down trees or use rocks, really just anything that you have to hold that mass of organic matter in and keep the grass from creeping in. I have a few videos that I've done that feature simple sheet mulching techniques in more detail, but basically you want to cover the area you're looking to plant in with cardboard, then layer straw, hay, manure, compost, even leaves, wood chips, any organic matter that'll suppress the weeds and break down over the course of a few years feeding the plants. Ideally, you want to do this in the fall before the next growing season, and continue to add to it more organic material as needed based on the types of plants you're growing. This step is crucial. Can't stress that enough. If you lay this foundation correctly, not only will your plants be fed sufficiently, not only will the weeds be properly suppressed, but the mulching that you lay, keeping in mind you want it to be at a minimum of 8 inches thick, will serve as a sponge holding rainwater much more efficiently than bare dirt, and also help retain that moisture on the hot days when you tend to lose a lot from evaporation. It just really helps to moderate the large swings from really wet to really dry, which is key for most plants. Keep in mind that if you don't skip this step and you really pay attention to detail, this is going to be the reason that you'll be able to pack your grow beds much tighter than most growers are used to as far as the spacing goes. If the soil is packed with not only plant food but moisture, your plants aren't going to be fighting each other for those essential nutrients or for the water. I also want to point out that with some plants, the tighter spacing will allow you to keep the plant smaller, which means younger, fresher leaves. I've seen this with kale, lettuce, or chard, for example. I tend to like the younger, smaller shoots rather than the larger, more developed leaves and stems, especially on chard. It's just so potent. The smaller harvests, they're just more palatable and in turn ready to harvest quicker. Second topic, companion planting versus monocropping. Companion planting, simply put, is mixing your plants together to provide some kind of benefit, whether mutual or one-sided, in your grow beds, or better yet, throughout the entire garden. Now, not everything grows well together, so there are rules to follow, and over the years you will, just as I have, accumulate the knowledge of companion planting do's and don'ts. Don't overwhelm yourself initially, and I would highly recommend taking the time to really think about what you like to eat and start with those plants and those connections. When you see the results of what happens to your yields when you implement companion planting techniques, you're going to continue to grow this way as long as you're growing. Plus, aesthetically, there's nothing that looks better than having this vast diversity throughout every grow bed, or even just to see one grow bed out of the entire garden is truly a sight for the eyes to behold. We have this mindset, especially here in America, of thinking of agriculture and crops in general, of being in these long rectangular blocks or these long rows of just one variety of plant. When really, companion planting, what it's doing is helping us to integrate numerous crops all within the same bed and exposing us to the benefits of those connections. I truly believe this is the way that we are meant to be growing our food. You don't have to necessarily have them as mixed as these carrots and pepper plants, but if you're going to do rows or blocks, you want them to be close enough to each other where they're not only going to benefit, but also be a benefit to the plants around them. For example, here's a patch of Brussels sprouts behind a row of celery. Now, this isn't the only place that I was growing Brussels and celery that year. So even if the whole bed got wiped out, odds are they're not going to find the other beds that I've planted throughout the garden. And once you can have that type of mindset, you start to realize what an error it is to put all of one variety of plant in one area of your garden rather than spacing them out. Especially when you start thinking about how much these plants benefit each other if placed in the right groups. In fact, I think I'm going to start a series talking specifically about companion planting do's and don'ts. Just giving you guys exactly what I've found over the years, showing you actual applications of these principles at work, showing you the benefits, the disadvantages, because you're going to run into both. There is, unfortunately, a lot of misinformation that I ran into on the web. But the beauty of this system is when you start to find these connections, again, aesthetically, it looks so good, and you're packing these grow beds just full of life. It truly is amazing to see how much they help each other and how much the benefits reflect themselves when it comes time to harvest. You really see it in the yields. So, again, this is a technique that hopefully you'll never fully master. Maybe when you're 90 years old and you've been gardening professionally for half of your life. But hopefully, we're at a place where we're going to continue to grow in the knowledge of what plants benefit other plants and what connections truly are beneficial and most impactful. The point I'm trying to make here is that you want to start retaining this kind of information as soon as possible and implementing it into your garden. It's really going to help you maximize your yields, and most important, it's going to keep you organic when a lot of farmers out there or backyard gardeners are tempted to use sprays or some kind of deterrent to those harmful pests that we're all trying to keep off our hard-earned yields. Some of the combinations that we use are pretty well known, like the Three Sisters, for example, but there's also others that we found throughout the years that I'll be sharing in upcoming videos that I just wish somebody would have shared with me when I was first starting out. This again is just a taste to get you thinking about these kinds of concepts and the reality of mixing your plants together, all the benefits you get, the aesthetic appeal, and really to just have it in the forefront of your mind of the usefulness and I would say the necessity of planting different kinds of crops intermingled versus the standard monocropping that tends to be the norm for so many growers. The third and last thing I want to touch on is pollination. You'll benefit immensely if you have a patch of flowers in your garden somewhere. Not only will it add some character and color to the space, but it'll also bring in the beneficial pollinators and the predators that you're going to want and would expect to see in a healthy, thriving grow space. I recommend doing a bit of research and finding out what wildflowers grow naturally in your area, starting there and then moving on as your garden grows to bigger and more unique flowers or herbs. Don't forget the herbs. Uh, the flowers on certain herbs are wonderful. It's hard to say which brings in more pollinators on our homestead, but again, you want that diversity throughout the garden, so we plant both. Most of the patches of flowers and herbs are growing on strategically placed hugel mounds throughout our orchard and mini vineyard. I really like the idea of our flower and herb cells being fed for years to come without any input from us, as well as the added benefit of having these pollination patches a bit elevated in the landscape and more noticeable to the beneficial insects that we're trying to draw in. The hugel mounds do really look cool covered in flowers and herbs too. We even have some edible shrubs on one, and there is just something really special about these guilds that people are drawn to when visiting our gardens. So look into hugel culture for yourself and start reaping all the benefits that the technique provides. In the years that we added these hugelculture pollination patches, we instantly saw an increase in yields throughout the homestead, especially when it came to our fruit trees and the edible shrubs. I'm going to save talking about nesting boxes for the different types of bees that you want to draw in for another video, but I do want to mention the benefits you get by bringing in such insects, or for most people, just allowing them to stay, as wasps specifically, pertaining to their predation skills. Wasps, for example, not only pollinate, but they will eat a variety of harmful insects that are lunching on your growing crops. They love ants, aphids, beetles. They will even eat grasshoppers. But like most things in life, it is give and take, because on dry years, these guys will also turn to your fruits and vegetables for the moisture they need. There was one year in particular where we had a pretty substantial drought, and we were forced to harvest crops at night or prematurely because of the destruction these predators were doing to our fruits and vegetables. But that was an extreme case, and overall, I would welcome wasps and all the worries they bring with open arms far quicker than trying to deter them from the gardens, because ultimately they benefit us far more than they do us harm, in my experience. So take the time to pick out a handful of different varieties of flowers and look for a spot in your garden that's elevated and perhaps in the middle of areas that you're looking to get higher pollination rates. If you do have a larger garden already established, you may want to put them on the perimeter. That way you can get a lot of those beneficial pollinators to come into the areas that you're looking to have them working. I hope this encourages you to take the time to really make the time for this step. Not only are you going to appreciate having access to fresh cut flowers, but you're going to see a vast difference in the production of fruiting, and overall you're going to bring in an ecology that's just beneficial for the whole homestead. I want to thank you guys for making it to the end. As always, I really appreciate the support. Any feedback that you have would be great. Any questions, I'll do my best to answer in a timely manner. So truly, I'm glad that you're into gardening, that you're looking into these kinds of concepts and principles and trying to teach yourself. My goal here is to help you as much as I can, to inspire you and encourage you to get out there, make mistakes, and provide yourself and the people you love with healthy, nutritionally dense food that is free of any pesticides or synthetic fertilizers, and just continue to keep putting your hands in the dirt, keep learning and growing. Thanks so much for stopping by. Until the next one, bye.